Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont, and this video is the ultimate guide to the Dynasty Warriors franchise. To be specific, this isn't a guide on how to play the games, but to the games themselves. Which is the best, which is the worst, and I'll add to that, this is specifically talking about the PC versions, the Steam copies that you can archive until Steam goes down one day in the, hopefully, far, far distant future. This is a franchise that's been running for more than 20 years and has around 40 entries, so for somebody just getting into it, that can be a daunting prospect. I'll also very briefly touch on Samurai Warriors and other muso titles. I've been playing the game since 2000 and have played almost every entry in the series. But of course, the opinions in this video are of course my own and subjective to some extent. I prefer 3 to 4, 7 to 8 and so on, but I'll try to be fair when covering the relevant titles. So let's start with a brief franchise history before we get into it all. There is a Dynasty Warriors 1, but for all intents and purposes, Dynasty Warriors 2 is the first entry in the franchise. The first game is a fighting game that you might compare with Soul Calibur. That is also why the numbers are different for the Japanese and English releases. Dynasty Warriors 3 is Shin Sangoku Musou 2, and so on. This video is specifically about the Shin Sangoku Musou series, the 1 versus 1000 entries. And whilst none of the earlier games are on Steam, I'll cover them real quick in case you have a PS2 or other means of playing them lying around. Dynasty Warriors 2 is very dated compared to the later games, but still has charm. Its strengths are some of the best maps in the series and stronger and more numerous allies, who seem to be more active compared to some later entries. However, it's a fairly small roster and lots of clones. Whereas Dynasty Warriors 3 was and remains one of my favourite games. It has a much larger roster, less clones, but still a lot, new modes, multiplayer, full voice acting, and feels like a natural development of 2. This one really solidified my interest in the franchise. Dynasty Warriors 4 is perhaps the most popular PS2 title for many people. It added several new gimmicks like duels with officers and the like. I never cared as much for this one compared to 3, personally, but that's very subjective. Some people really like 4, others are more into 3. Dynasty Warriors 5 was perhaps the kicking off point for the next generation in terms of characters, where they started to bring in these later, younger characters like Guan Yu's son, allowing them to push into the later years of the Three Kingdoms era. It's not a bad title, I'd rate it above 4, but lower than 3, personally. Some of the movesets in 5 just felt a little off to me. Dynasty Warriors 6 was the first time the series tried to reinvent itself, not counting Dynasty Warriors 2, of course. It was to disastrous effect, in my opinion. They overhauled the charge combo system with the Renbu system, which I didn't care for. Most of the roster was cut, and I do mean most of it. The game was full of clones, and it was probably the worst title in the entire franchise, frankly. Then there's plenty of spin-offs, Extreme Legends, which are expansion packs that remixed each title and added some new features. Empires, which added in creator character and custom campaigns, more tactical elements and so forth. Empires have traditionally been some of the most popular versions of these titles. Then we have Warriors Orochi 1 and 2, or Muso Orochi in Japan, which are fantastic crossover titles between Dynasty and Samurai. Strike Force, or Multi-Raid, which was cashing in on the mobile and Monster Hunter craze in Japan. These titles are basically Dynasty Warriors DBZ, where characters go Super Saiyan and fly around, and I made Zhang Liao go disco, disco, disco by spamming 2 different voice lines. Fun times. I think only Strike Force or Multi-Raid 1 came out in the West. I think Multi-Raid 2 never got a Western release so far as I'm aware. There's some other spin-offs of course, but these are the main ones. So now we move on to the later main titles that are available on Steam. Technically there was a PC version of Dynasty Warriors 4, but we're only talking about Steam versions in this video. Currently that gives us Dynasty Warriors 7, 8, 8 Empires, 9, and 9 Empires. And of course, the recent Dynasty Warriors Origins, which may or may not be out already depending on when I release this video. We also have Warriors Orochi 3 and 4. Dynasty Warriors 7 remains one of the best entries in the franchise. Not only did it fix the combat from 6 by going back to something closer to the classic system, It gave us weapon switching, you could have two weapons and swap between them. EX attacks. The addition of Jin as a faction, finally taking us to the end of the Three Kingdoms era. The version on Steam has virtually all of the DLC included. Now you might be thinking, why would I play 7 instead of 8 or 9? Well, if you're super new to the series and you don't know anything, the story in these games is effectively the same in each. Each game is telling the same history, so it isn't like Dynasty Warriors 8 continues the story from 7. Each title individually tells the story of the Three Kingdoms era of Chinese history, as based on the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. But here's why I prefer 7 to 8. The story is a big reason. In my opinion, 7 has the best story mode out of any of the DW titles. It strikes the right balance between giving each character their time to shine, hitting the dramatic and famous moments, and the right amount of interplay between factions. For people who have experienced it, just compare the cutscene leading to the Battle of Yiling in 7 compared to in 8. Now, 7 also includes the Conquest mode, which is a fun extra, and the bundled DLC has remakes of many DW2 maps, which are a lot of fun to go through. It also has most of the costumes from the PS2 era games. Simply put, DW7 is a fantastic way to get into the series, get to know the characters, and learn the story. Moving on to Dynasty Warriors 8, I never much cared for this title. It wasn't bad, but it had the same issue in a sense that Dynasty Warriors 4 had. It added gimmicks that felt pointless, as if they were just there to be there, to add something on top where it didn't need to be. Effectively, they added a rock, paper, scissors element to weapons, which then also led to the pointless finicking around and storm rush and all these things which, in my opinion, don't feel good. That said, the gameplay wasn't awful in 8. I just didn't like the gimmicks, and I felt that 7 delivered a purer experience. I believe there's 0 clones in Dynasty Warriors 8 on Steam. Everyone has a unique weapon. Dynasty Warriors 7, even in its XL state on Steam, has some weapon clones, but they are few enough to not really be an issue to me, and everyone feels unique enough. And some of the new weapons in 8 were just bizarre, frankly. Then we have Dynasty Warriors 9. The only advantage 9 has over 7 and 8 is that it has online multiplayer. 7 and 8 lack these, I believe, even though they had online co-op on the older consoles when they first came out. Online co-op in 7 was hilarious because you could swap weapons and it wouldn't show for the other player, and you could break things a lot, but I digress. Dynasty Warriors 9 was another attempt to sort of reinvent the series, and it didn't work well, frankly. This time they followed the trend of open world equals automatically better, right? Only it wasn't. The open world was huge, but empty. There was virtually no point to explore it. Sure, it was kind of fun for maybe an hour just running around the world and going like, oh hey, that's this thing, there's the Great Wall and stuff. Outside of this, the story was extremely forgettable, the gameplay felt pretty bad, just about every aspect of the game suffered from the open world, and 9 Empires was slightly better, but still not really worth it in my opinion. Unless you're rich, or super interested in how open world DW looks, just skip this one. That leads us to the 2 Orochi titles on Steam, 3 and 4. Specifically, Warriors Orochi 3 Ultimate Definitive Edition and Warriors Orochi 4 Ultimate. 3 came out after 4 on Steam, just to make it even more confusing. Now, these titles do, in a sense, have a continuity. Each Orochi game does follow loosely on from the prior one, but you don't really need to worry about that as they follow on in the loosest sense imaginable. The premise of the Orochi games is that some big bad dude, called Orochi, summoned all of the heroes from different eras into another dimension for his nefarious reasons. These titles go full on fantasy, and they're all about fan service. If you like the idea of Cao Cao meeting Nobunaga Oda, if that makes you excited, then you get it. If that made you go, cow cow what? Then yeah. The 2 titles are both great. I have to give the win to 3. First up, it's cheaper. It has a lot more content than 4, and slightly better gameplay in my opinion. In terms of being content rich, 3 is definitely superior to 4. In fact, Warriors Orochi 3 might be the best Warriors game, period. In terms of character count, amount of content, time you can sink into it, whilst enjoying a huge roster with, I'm pretty sure, 0 clones. So you've got 100 plus unique character movesets. I think it's like 120, 130 characters, there's a lot of them. There are some advantages that 4 enjoys, however. Online multiplayer, for one. It also has certain characters who are absent from 3, but then 3 has a few characters missing in 4. If you're super into stuff like Greek and Norse mythology, then 4 might be the one to go for, as you have characters like Zeus and Athena. I think most of the missing characters in 4 who were in 3 were collaboration characters, like they only added Ryu Hayabusa back into 4 with the Ultimate Edition. Both titles are fantastic, but I give the slight edge to 3. Finally, we have other titles available on Steam. Samurai Warriors 4 DX, 4 2, and 5 are available on Steam, along with Spirit of Sanada. Simply put, get 4 DX. That said, of the whole franchise, Samurai Warriors 2 probably had the best story mode, but that one's unfortunately not on Steam. There's a lot of other muso style games as well. I've never played some of them, but I've heard good things about Hyrule Warriors and One Piece Pirate Warriors 4, which is on Steam. Then you have the muso clones, which aren't made by Koei, Dynasty Warriors clones, like Fate Extella Link, which is pretty feature and content light as compared to a lot of Warriors games, but it's fun if you're a fan of the Fate franchise. Sengoku Basara was the big rival back in the day, but never got much in the way of Western releases, and none whatsoever on Steam. And I know a small but dedicated group are waiting for a new Dynasty Warriors Gundam. And then there was also kind of like a Fist of the North Star Muso, a Berserk Muso. There's been a lot of licensed Muso titles. And some of them fall into the range of not quite Muso, but close enough, like there's a Persona one, for example. But summary time. Are you looking for the story content of Three Kingdoms? Try Dynasty Warriors 7. The Romance of the Three Kingdoms book is also worth checking out if you like reading, or if you'd rather have a more watchable format, here's the TV series, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, 1994 or 2010 editions. I'm a big fan of the 2010 version. I think it's a very fun show. Dynasty Warriors Origins is shaping up like it might have a nice story mode, but it doesn't even reach the Three Kingdoms era, so it's kind of limited too in that sense. Are you looking for a huge roster of over 100 characters, loads of content, and something you can plug away at for a huge amount of time? Then Warriors Orochi 3 is the way to go, and is probably the best overall Muso Warriors game. Is it multiplayer action you're after? Then Warriors Orochi 4 is probably the way to go. And if for some reason you really want an open world, then go for 9, but also don't go for 9. At any rate, that about covers it. If you have questions about a specific game in the series that wasn't covered in this video, please do ask down below in the comments and I'll get back to you ASAP. I hope this video was useful, and of course Dynasty Warriors Origins is either out or about to come out, so let's hope that the new title stands out as one of the best in the franchise. Until next time, thanks so much for watching, and take care. And you don't need to leave a comment complaining about the way I pronounce Dynasty, because that's how it's pronounced in British English, is Dynasty, and in American English as Dynasty. The more you know. Ciao.
一直能葬身火海，天也救不了他。丞相，不好了，丞相！